The zoning meeting of the Parish of Ascension for August 13th, 2014 will come to order. Let the minutes show that all members are present. Staff's already all introduced themselves, and so are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
Move for approval.
Mr. Ori, Mr. Callender, all in favor?
Aye.
So be it. Let's see. We're going to skip to item 9A, zoning review ID 2408.14 for New Singular Wireless PCS LLC DBA AT&T Mobility. Sir.
Good evening. Probably have more information than you need this evening, but in case you have any questions. Chip Lyons here on behalf of AT&T Wireless. We have two matters that up for consideration tonight for conditional use. The first one is a location of a 185-foot cell phone tower, telecom tower, in a RM medium intensity residential zoning district. On this particular site, we need a setback variance because the height of the required setback requirement for a tower is tower height 185 feet plus 30 feet, has to be 215 feet from any structures. On the AT&T generally leases sites for telecom towers, so this particular tower, there are two structures on our landlord's property. It's not on adjoining property. Two structures on our landlord's property that are within the 215-foot setback area, so we would need a variance for that. And I can, if you guys have any questions on the application, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, well, first I'll ask for staff report on this item.
Basically, is what the applicant just stated. He's asking for a conditional use to construct a cell tower off of a highway, off of Roddy Road, just south of Black Bayou Road, or Black Bayou itself, on the west side of Roddy. And he's, like he stated, he is requesting a variance to the setback from the perimeter of the tower to any resident or structure. The code does require perimeter of the tower of monopole of any residence or structure within a distance of 100% of the height plus 30. And he stated it's 185. I have 180. He's probably putting in maybe the lightning rod. I didn't have that in there. So, but basically, there is an existing mobile home, 154 plus or minus, within, and an existing shed within an existing setback or required setback. That's recommended to approve.
Are there people living in the mobile home?
Yes, sir. As far as I know, yes, sir.
Is that you said that was the person who's leasing you the property?
Correct. Yeah, and I've got.
So I assume he has no objection to you
Correct.
putting the
Yeah,
tower up?
he agreed to the location of the tower. This shows you approximately where the tower is located. That's the mobile home right there, and then I can also show you. This shows the setback radius. So that's the 215-foot requirement. The mobile home is about 155 feet away, and there's another metal building right on the edge of the setback area.
Okay.
And just for addressing the needs for the towers, I can just briefly tell you that almost 40% of homes in the country don't even have a landline anymore, and mobile data usage increased from 2012 to 2013 alone by 80%. Over the same period of time, tablet usage as a portion of mobile data usage increased by 66%. So at this point, people having cell phone coverage and having cell phone coverage and capacity is essentially a kind of basic service. It's no longer discretionary or a luxury item, except if your kids ask for one. But for everyone else, it really is it's sort of a basic necessity. And what we usually do on sites is we'll put together a coverage map that shows And the coverage maps, the colors are a little backwards. Red is actually the best coverage, that's in building. Yellow is sort of medium in vehicle, and green is the worst, meaning you only have outdoor coverage. So this is what the coverage currently looks like in this area. These are other towers where AT&T has antennas in the area, and this is the current coverage, by putting in the tower there with AT&T's antenna, you get in-building coverage in a much larger area. And the towers are all designed to allow for co-location of other carriers. Building a new tower essentially is the telecom company's sort of last resort. The easier thing for them to do, if it's available, is to put an antenna on an existing tower, but if there's nothing in the area that fits within the network, then they go in and build a new tower. And the main issue that they're dealing with now in a lot of these areas is they may have coverage there, but because of increased capacity requirements, essentially the coverage area shrinks. If you have 500 people using devices and only making cell phone calls, you may have and just sort of pick numbers out of the air, 2-mile radius of coverage from a certain antenna. But if all of a sudden you have 1,000 people in that area using their iPads or other devices, and they're watching Netflix, then that coverage area from that particular antenna is going to shrink down. So that's why the companies are working as hard as they can to both increase antenna equipment on existing towers, but where that's not sufficient, to come in and request permission to construct a new tower.
And do companies generally share these towers? I mean, it's
Yes,
like,
they do.
It won't just be AT&T, right?
Correct. It'll be AT&T. What they do is someone will go in and build it, and then usually the person that builds it goes at the top, and again, height is very important in terms of the distance which the radio frequency goes, because essentially your cell phone, it's incredible in that it's sort of, it's a computer that's that big, but at the same time, it's also functionally a walkie-talkie because it communicates to the tower using radio frequency. So generally speaking, the higher the better. Usually whoever builds it will take the top rung, but then they are designed to allow for co-location of other antennas at lower positions on the tower. So basically each provider will have maybe 2, 3, or 4 antenna deployment at one level, then the next provider will have that at a certain level, maybe 10 or 20 feet lower, so there's no interference between the antenna deployments on a particular tower.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing for this.
I think we need a public hearing.
So is there anyone who would, Mr. Aguilar?
Hi, Billy Aguilar. If I may I use your, go into your maps here? Question for staff, and I assume this is a 210, 15-foot safety zone. Falling on it, fall raised, but my question is
blocking his microphone.
What if this guy decided to build a house right in the future?
No, it doesn't. What happens is that person that at the time, if he wants to build a house that close to it, he'd be allowed to build that close to it.
Okay, the ordinance doesn't require that the entire fall zone be within the
No, sir.
leased area of the town?
No, sir.
Just for information's sake, have you ever known one of those towers to fall?
No, not in Louisiana, and I think, post-Katrina and other storm events, the issues with coverage were more because of power failure, but based on the work that I've done with AT&T, I'm not aware of any of these towers coming down.
Do you know what wind velocity they're made to withstand?
They, I believe we have information in the construction drawing that from a timing perspective, usually what they do is they'll have construction drawings that are done prior to getting zoning approval. After zoning approval, they then go back and do full engineering drawings for the tower. So I'm not sure that I have the wind speed yet in the construction drawings. Sometimes it's included, but sometimes it's not. So they're done in accordance with applicable code, both
I understand. I was
local and
curious.
national.
We've seen some that aren't designed to follow the
Yeah, they-
entire 185 foot. Is that one that we're dealing with here? I mean, does it crumple up at the bottom more than
Yeah,
what it would
well, this
linearly
particular
follow?
tower actually is known as a self-support, so instead of being a monopole,
Yeah.
it's sort of lattice work,
Triangle.
3-sided. And sometimes if there is if there's a need to, it's usually on a monopole where what they'll do is they'll increase the thickness of the bottom part of the structure so that if the monopole fell, it would collapse in upon itself as opposed to the entire monopole coming
But
down.
we're not dealing with this one here.
Correct.
This
This
could
is
fall
not a
185
monopole
foot.
sign.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
I don't think we
And
need a public hearing.
did I hadn't done that already? So I couldn't hear what you're saying. Is there any further discussion here? Do I have a motion?
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so, we have a second one? Yes.
Yes, so the second application is about, I think, let me see what the distance is from, I think it's about 4 miles. Yeah, it's about 4 miles away, just on the other side of I-10, and it's actually adjacent to the Dutchtown Meadows resubplat that you approved earlier.
And this was the one that was, you put it off from last month because there was some overlap with the Dutch
Yeah,
Town?
so the owner of the property had granted a lease to AT&T for this particular property for the tower. Let me go ahead and get, so this is the tower location. There's an existing road, it's hard to see on here, but basically kind of loops around. And the property owner had granted us access from Highway 74 over this property, and we were going to loop up that way to get to the tower, but then I guess as part of the sale of his remaining property to the developer for Dutchtown, they were using part of this area as a detention pond, and we're going to have some of their lots in that area. So what AT&T, we worked with the engineers for the resubplat, the engineers who were handling the resub to relocate our access to this area so that it didn't interfere with the development down here. So that was the reason for the from last month.
Are they identical towers?
No, the one on this one, Highway 74, is a 170-foot monopole. We're not, just want to make sure.
I know that the FCC requires beacons at 200 feet, but will you put the beacons on anyway at the 175 feet or whatever you said it is?
My experience is usually they don't do that unless they're required to, because the beacons, it's sort of part of the challenges of telecom towers, that everyone wants coverage, but there are limits on where you can put towers, how close to residences. Beacons are an issue, for example, where if someone is near the tower, they don't want the beacon there, and then you end up, what you can do if you put the beacons on is you have a dual lighting system, so it strobes one color during the day.
So is that why you stay below 200 feet?
Yeah, different, yeah, and so the height is really, the lighting is not, I don't believe it to be a big issue, but the height is really designed more based on the engineer's analysis of the network and what's the best height for that cell phone signal to be broadcast from.
I'm going to open a public hearing. Are there any further comments? So I'll close the public hearing. Any more discussion? Staff, would you like to? So anyone on the commission like to make any further comments about the tower?
I move for approval.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So, thank you.
Thank you for the education, Mr. Lyon. Appreciate it.
Staff report.
Yes, so a couple of months ago, this commission had an application before you to consider a rezoning application on South St. Landry Avenue, just north of Lamar Dixon. And they were requesting to rezone to light industrial. This body made a recommendation to deny, partially based on staff recommendation that we didn't think that traffic could handle it, but also It's based on the idea that if you eventually connect South St. Landry through Edenbourne to 44, you're going to have Cabela's and Tanger at one end, you're going to have Lamar Dixon in the middle, you're going to have Edenbourne with RPCC and potentially a commercial anchor at the other. Perhaps light industrial isn't the character that that road should develop in over time. In some discussions that I've had with a council member in particular, he asked, well, could we change the request to mixed use? And I said, in the future, when perhaps some more of these things have been built and we're a little further along, I could probably support mixed use because that's eventually what it's going to be. And he asked why we couldn't support it now. I said, well, because now, if I had 30 acres of mixed use, less than a par 5 off of Highway 30, that thing would become an RV park faster than you could snap your fingers. And you'd fill it up with temporary labor, and that would stay there for 10 or 15 years. Mm-hmm. That's what would happen, because that's where RV parks are allowed. So then we came up with the idea, well, what if we created a brand new zoning category? We could call it MHRV, mobile home / RV. And if somebody wanted to do a new RV park, they would request a rezone, and that's what they would ask for, mobile home / RV park. And we would remove the ability to build mobile home and RV parks from within mixed use and Crossroads commercial. What that does is opens up the door for the commission and the council to have a say every time somebody wants to do a new mobile home or RV park. They've got to come through the public hearing process, rezone their property to the correct designation, and then build a park. So what I've got in front of you in the staff report are 3 different sections. The first section is the zoning tables. And so what that does is that reflects how we would revise the tables to do this. And what we did is simply added RV parks, and we mobile home parks, RV parks, and mobile home subdivisions. Those are all sort of the ways that they're called out in our tables. And we added a column called MHRV on that one sheet and said CA. And what that means is after the zoning has been approved, they would come back to you guys with a contract agreement that says, here's how we're going to address our traffic and here's how we're going to address our drainage. So they'd have another public hearing to get their mobile home or RV park approved. The second item under the staff report is the zoning designation. And so what that is within the code, we would need to add it as a new line item. So establishment of zoning districts, we would establish under the high-intensity districts, mobile home park, RV park, and we would create a definition a little further into the code. And what that is to do is to say, if you as the commission, you as the council are going to consider a rezoning application to mobile home RV, what are the criteria you should be looking for? And so that's what we drafted. It says this area is designated to provide for an area to develop mobile home and or RV parks. The district is intended for high-density, single-family residential development that is designed consistent with Appendix 8 and Appendix 9 of the Unified Land Development Code. That's our mobile home and our RV park code. This district is intended to ensure a suitable living environment in mobile home and RV parks and to ensure the compatibility of such development with adjacent properties. Properties shall only be considered for this zoning designation if they are located outside of the most up-to-date 100-year floodplain designation according to the Ascension Parish GIS map and immediately adjacent to a piece of property that is already zoned mixed-use, Crossroads commercial, or MHRV. What we're saying is we don't want you just to go out into the rural areas and start rezoning to mobile home parks. That's not the intent. The intent is to keep them where we locate them today, which is in the commercial areas where you're most likely going to have more infrastructure for water, for sewer, for traffic, and outside the 100-year flood zone, because mobile home RVs, well, RVs specifically, are not going to elevate themselves. They're in and out, and our current code says that an RV can't be parked in a spot longer than 6 months. So there's some wiggle room there why we want them outside the 100-year flood zone. If they're in the 100-year flood zone, then it gets to a maintenance nightmare. The commentary says this district is designed to concentrate mobile home and RV parks where the parish council feels they're best suited to occur. Consideration should be given to available and future infrastructure in the immediate area, adjacent land use, traffic, and drainage concerns. So not only do we need to amend the zoning tables with one ordinance, we need to amend the development code with a second ordinance, and then thirdly, the third item in the staff report is to amend the zoning map, because we need to add that category and that color to the zoning map. Today, Lance and I are pretty much in agreement. We don't think we want to go out and rezone any existing parks. If they go away tomorrow, let's let them go away and become what their zoning category says, either mixed use, crossroads commercial, but I would say 85 to 90% of them would go to a rural, conservation, or residential medium 3 zoning. New applications would go to the mobile home RV code color. So that's what these 3 items are. They're to try to put our hands around how would we address creating a new category and remove them out of a category that we may be okay for a piece of property to be commercial, but maybe not in a mobile home or RV park.
How do you define a mobile home park with the ordinance?
It's in the ordinance. There's a whole big section on mobile home parks, but generally speaking, it's one lot, and it's up to 18 units an acre. You know, there's standards for the drives and the sewer and the buffers and landscaping, and it's all in the code.
So, because you don't want to apply to somebody who puts a mobile home on their single lot, because that's where they live,
No, a mobile home park is more than one unit
More than one
on
unit.
one lot.
on one specific lot. So that
Correct.
takes out the possibility of someone, I don't know, family partitioning their lot to put a mobile home park there.
Right, and you know, I've got examples here that we're not at that point in the discussion, but simple divisions have become something that people really don't like across this parish, because if somebody does have adequate road frontage, they don't want a family partition, they want to do what the code says they can do. They simply divide their property with frontage and square footage, but they do it 9 times, and then they still have frontage, and they do it a few more times. Now you've got 13 legally created lots, and they put mobile homes on every one of them. They call us 100 times a week saying, y'all just approved a mobile home park. And we say, no, each one of those mobile homes is on a separate lot, and we do not control the type of unit that goes on a legally created lot.
Right.
So, you know, there may be some things we need to do in the code to address that situation that may come to y'all in the next month or two about, you know, how do we address that? But at this point, we don't have anything for that.
I just want to know, have you ever heard of any instance where a type of zoning would last for a term of years and then expire?
No.
Because that would be a perfect thing to do with zoning for a RV or mobile home park. It could exist for that length of time, then revert to the previous zoning, or you know, have to come back to be renewed at the end of a term.
We contemplated that, but the current standards that we have are very costly to build. And not many are going to expend the cost of building hard surface roads and parking spots for units and all the utilities and a sewer plant and extending water, and have that thing expire and potentially not get reapproved.
Although people do it with paying millions of dollars for a TV station or a radio station license. You know, if it's for 25 years or 15 years, you have plenty of time to make a profit during that time, even though the infrastructure is very expensive.
Right.
Ricky, we're going to have the same requirements for RV parks as we have for mobile home parks?
There are two
Anything
different codes in your land development code. If you
Right.
get home and you want to flip to sections, I think it's 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. There are two different codes. I'm not exactly sure why they separate them. Maybe they were written at different times.
They were separated, though, initially.
Generally speaking, they're the same. I mean, the standards are about the same between the two.
And that includes some, I think you said landscaping. I mean,
It's minimal.
we're requiring, why don't we take a shot at making the mobile home parks a little more amenable? Like some landscaping, maybe a green space. I mean, sometimes, a lot of times there are a lot of kids there.
Right. If you go to Powers Trailer Park on Airline Highway, they came before the previous commission and got an expansion to their park. The front park is historic and been there for decades. The back part that they redone is pretty nice. I mean, they did a good job building it to the current standard, And if you go through there and say, okay, yeah, they need X, Y, and Z more, then yeah, we could look at amending the code. But it's pretty nice when you compare it to every other trailer park in this parish.
Where is that?
Powers Trailer Park is just south of where Roddy or Joseph Ario hits Airline Highway.
Ricky, what action would you like us to take?
I'd like to request a public hearing for all three of these at the next meeting.
Yeah, good.
Do I have
Ricky.
a motion?
What- Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Ah.
Josh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
for
no,
asking
and you
questions.
didn't. I mean, and he probably said it before. I'm just trying to figure out
because
where that had come from.
We
and
will just not adjourn until you're ready.
Nope, I'm ready to adjourn. I will make the motion
Well,
to
maybe
adjourn.
a question
at that
before
point.
we adjourn. Do you anticipate pushback politically on this?
I really don't.
I can't see anybody opposing it, but
I don't.
Well-
People may question why we're doing it in the first place. Are we
That's what I
taking
was
care of
fixing to
some
ask.
special interest to do this?
Yeah.
And it really isn't specific to any one case or one person.
Yeah.
But the idea that we do have a lot of temporary worker housing that could be a need here in the near future,
Right.
and having a mechanism that not only this body, but the council has to approve every single one moving forward, I think is a very positive step.
We put a moratorium on RV
There was
trailer
a
parks?
3-month moratorium that ended in April.
Right.
And that was simply to remove RV parks for tourists from the code.
Okay.
Because it wasn't defined, and so people were calling and say, yeah, I'm gonna do one of those RV parks for tourists in my backyard. And you're like, well, what does that mean, you know? They're gonna be there forever, you know?
I got all my
Anything
cousins
further
moving
from
in
anybody?
no.
So did we adjourn? Okay, good.